into the realm of the Underworld. Underworld, Chapter 8 of the book. Betel Nuts and Other Stories by Simeon G. Silverio, Jr. He was off from school by 3 in the afternoon. As usual, 14-year-old Simeon would spend the rest of the day hanging out with friends in his neighborhood in Quiapo district in downtown Manila instead of doing his homework at the library. Sometimes he would watch movies. There were no television sets then, and people only listened to the radio in the evenings. There were no video games to entertain a curious boy like him. He would work for an hour in his father's printing press located on the first floor of their apartment, doing bindery work like sorting receipts or stapling booklets. Once he had earned his movie money, he would go to the nearby Society Theater on Echagüe Street, or the Boulevard, or Times Theater on Quezon Boulevard. For less than a peso, he could watch a double feature of second-run movies. For only 25 centavos, he could see 2 second-run Tagalog movies at the Illusion Theater a block away. 1 peso and 20 centavos was the price of a movie ticket for a first-class premiere showing of one movie. Other times, he would read comic books at a nearby high school after class. From his house on Plateria Street, Simeon would turn left on Carriedo Street, pass through Plaza Miranda and cross Quezon Balvavide, through the newly built underpass to R. Hidalgo Street where a high school was located. Across the school was a comic book rental place. He would rent Filipino comic books and spend the rest of the afternoon in the world of comic characters like Kulafu, the Jungle Boy, D.I. Trace, the private detective, Bonding, the adult baby boy, and Silveria, the talking horse. Some of the comic books were old, published before he was born. "We ordered them from faraway Santa Rosa, Laguna," he heard the owner boasted to a customer. At that time in 1962, Santa Rosa was in the boondocks. One had to take a Laguna transit bus and travel the narrow highway road towards the south to reach the place in a 2 or 3 hour ride. Some people from Santa Rosa would work and stay in the Manila on weekdays and go home to their families on weekends. Today, Santa Rosa, with its new housing developments, is part of the metropolis. Residents who work in Manila commute every day thanks to the South Expressway and other roads. Simeon was walking home along R. Hidalgo Street after spending 2 hours reading comics when 4 boys, 2 years older and much bigger than him, approached him. "Give us your money," they demanded. He wanted to refuse, but was afraid they would beat him up if he did not give in to their demand. He handed them his wallet. "Let us take his watch also," the smallest of the 4 suggested. Simeon came home that afternoon without his money and his watch. 2 days later, his playmate Teddy wanted to read comic books on R. Hidalgo Street with him. "I wouldn't go there anymore," Simeon told Teddy. "Why?" He told him about the 4 boys who mugged him. "Why didn't you tell me?" Teddy asked him. "Let me take care of this." Teddy lived on P. Paterno Street. He was a year older, much bigger and slow-witted. When he was in kindergarten, a classmate dared him to cut the classmate's finger with scissors. Teddy did, and his classmate's finger bled profusely. Lucky for the classmate, the scissors were small, the kind that children use to cut out paper, and were not that sharp. Otherwise, the classmates would have lost his finger at an early age. With that initial claim to infamy, Teddy always tried to further boost his self-proclaimed legendary reputation among his peers. He, however, did not fail Simeon when he handed Simeon the stolen watch and money 2 days later. "How did you get these back?" Simeon asked. "Chico made some calls," Teddy replied. Chico was a toughie who hung around the corner of Platerias and Carriedo Streets, watching over the sidewalk vendors. A city ordinance had prohibited selling wares along Carriedo Street because the activity clogged the sidewalks and made it difficult for pedestrians to pass through. But just like the prostitution den that operated across Simeon's house, the authorities tolerated it, presumably because the city officials and police were on the take. Occasionally, raids would be conducted for show. When policemen tried to apprehend them, the sidewalk vendors would run away to the side streets and sometimes put their wares easily under the parked cars. The practice must have been a rule in the game because the apprehending policemen would ignore the wares under the vehicles. If the police were able to grab a vendor by the collar, they would just take him to the precinct. After a few hours, the apprehended vendor would be back in business. For residents like Simeon, it was a cheap form of entertainment, a welcome break to the humdrum of everyday life. Chico would park his shiny, fiery red Jeep on Platerius near Corriedo. He often wore loud, long-sleeved shirts with his thickly pomaded mane of black hair combed backward and his pointed, shiny black shoes. He gleamed in black from his head to his feet. Occasionally, a vendor would approach him and give him money, which he would surreptitiously put in his back pocket. He would call Teddy, who would be playing with Simeon on the street, and give him money for a pack of cigarettes. Teddy loved to do errands for him because he was always told to keep the change. Still, Simeon was hesitant to go back to the comic book rental place. It took him another week to muster enough courage to do so, but not after he had seen all the movies shown in the nearby second-run theaters, and there was nothing else for him to do. Upon reaching our Hidalgo Street, he saw the 4 boys who had mugged him. This time, however, they seemed to back off, staying away as far as they could. They crossed to the opposite side of the street, as if clearing the path before him. After going into the comic rental place and reading a bunch of comics, he stood up and tried to pay the owner. Oddly, the owner refused to accept his money, telling him it was on the house. Simeon did not ask why and proceeded to enjoy the sudden privilege from then on. One time, a pretty teenager was manning the place. Simeon could hardly concentrate on the comic book, as he kept glancing at the girl, admiring her beautiful face. When he stood up to leave, the girl called him and demanded his payment. At that time, the owner arrived and stopped him from paying. "He's Chico's ward," he told the girl. "He gets to read for free." The girl, who seemed to be oblivious to Simeon at first, seemed to notice him now. She gave Simeon a sweet smile and admiring glance on his way out. Simeon looked forward to seeing the girl in the days ahead, but he never saw her again. "Let's watch a burlesque show," Teddy proposed to Simeon one day. "How?" he asked his playmate. "We're minors." "Let me take care of it," Teddy assured him, donning his tough guy persona. The theater Inde was showing a striptease show in their neighborhood. Teenage boys like them could only look at the photos of the beautiful girls wearing bikinis displayed in the lobby. Only adults were allowed to see the show. Teddy and Simeon walked towards Carriedo Street, turned right and left on P. Gomez Street. "But this is the back of the theater," Simeon told Teddy. "Yep," Teddy said. "We'll enter through the back door." They waited for 10 minutes when 2 of Teddy's other friends came and waited with them. After a while, they saw Chico coming towards them. "Bakit kasama iyan? How come he is with you?" Chico pointed at Simeon. "He will watch the show with us," Teddy said. "No, he can't," Chico said. "Nakakahiya sa tatay niyan. Baka pagalitan ako. It's a shame to his father. He might scold me." Teddy could not help Simeon. "Sorry," he told his friend. Simeon was not disappointed, however. He felt proud his father commanded so much respect from a tough guy like Chico. Simeon proceeded to the nearby Clover Theater and watched a wholesome stage show featuring the comic talents of Arure, Chuchi, Doro de los Ojos, and Tommy Angeles, and the beautiful voices of the singers like Letty Laboon. He also marveled at the blind singer Norma Lapuz and the Perry Como of the Philippines, Diomedes Maturan. Years passed, and Chico's reputation outgrew Quiapo. At one time, he was mentioned as a suspect in a bombing incident, one of the most sensational crimes of the decade. One Christmas morning, a photo showing the dead bodies of a notorious gangster and his henchmen was shown on the front pages of the newspapers. Their suspected killer was Chico. The former small-time tough guy from Quiapo, however, seemed untouchable and was said to be a boyhood friend of one of the high officials in the city. One morning, a photo published in the afternoon paper caught Simeon's eye. It was Chico. According to the news, a rival hoodlum had shot and murdered him in retaliation for the murder of the notorious gangster on Christmas Day. While the high city official was able to shield Chico from the long arm of the law, the lawless bullets in the underworld took him out for good. Simeon continued to use the watch Chico had retrieved for him until the day it stopped. The afternoons he had spent in 1962 with Teddy and Chico were possibly his closest ventures into the realm of the underworld. These memories, which became part of his formative years, had enabled him to see how things were done by force, if not illegally. Chico might have lived a normal life and eventually seen his grandchildren grow. However, he chose a different path and paid the price. Simeon hopes his childhood friend, Teddy, made it through the right way. And that closes the book on this matter. Subscribe to this channel to listen to more enjoyable stories like this. This is episode 8 of the YouTube channel, Our Life in Times Stories. Beetle Nuts and Other Stories is published by Papyrus Books with email address papyrusbooks@yahoo.com. To order a copy of the book, go to amazon.com and enter the name of the author, Simeon Silverio, in the browser.